Mother, son of a. Oh, I'm sorry.
Of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world.
Well,
You.
that is one of my longtime friends from college, Karina Rose Music. Radio Hope, I don't know if you noticed this, but I featured an artist last night. His name is Jamel Knight, NYT, and he's a, African American performer, and he performs on the subways of New York City, and I met him there, and we had a whole hour-long discussion. So in this time, I'm really finding out that sharing the creatives of New York is so much more helpful than just complaining about what we see on our TV.
Yeah. Well, like we started to talk about, before you officially went on air. Yesterday was kind of a bum day, but what you're saying right now ties in well with what I need to be refocusing on. What is our calling in life? You
Mm.
know, and I
Well,
think
what is
yours
it?
with the music thing, and music is so Did you know that Martin Luther said next to the word of God, music deserves the highest praise? Isn't that an amazing statement?
That
I love
that is
I love that.
amazing. And he in that era, you had a lot of amazing hymnists that just put together all these songs. You had um, songs that came out of the civil rights movement that are still classics to this day. By the way,
Yeah, and not just the civil rights movement, but
and then
all
beyond in the
kinds of
civil,
different things.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So music is healing the soul, and on another note, music heals dementia. They say that when patients who have it um, start to get their memory back when they hear music, so it's a powerful form.
Very, 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 very.
And another thing that's powerful is actually positive enforcement of the police, which we seem to have seen around the country last night. And I didn't hear much of rioting. I heard very little of that. I don't know if you heard anything, but it seems like there was a calmer night in America last night.
Oh, I certainly hope so. It's yeah, I don't know. I think that was part of the downer yesterday a little bit too. It's just I don't know. Seems darkest before the dawn or something. Or
You know what I
I'm
would.
glad there's dawn. I'm glad there's
Mm,
morning and his mercies are new every day, because I didn't know how today was going to go. I was thinking about, I was done podcasting for a while.
wow. It's weird. I had that same kind of thing, but I was just like, well, what can we do? And then I fired myself up. I said, you know what? We're not going to talk about actually how the Bible does talk about law enforcement, doesn't it? They say he has designated those who are called to protect on his behalf, on the country's behalf. It's kind of how it plays out in the Bible, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, I think we're supposed to, respect the government. I think we need to come under a rule of law is a good thing. You don't want to be driving 85 in a school district.
No, you don't.
So
No.
yeah, but the problem with that is you're restricting my freedom. Oh, please, people. This is part of what's driving me nuts. It's the thought process that people use to arrive at their conclusions. It's like, really? Wow.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It just sometimes they post without thinking, and I'm at fault of that sometimes. But others are probably worse.
And that is part of what got me yesterday. And
Mm.
I'm realizing more and more I need to stay back from at least some social media sites. There's some folks that are just there to, it's almost like they're starting a riot on Facebook. That's what it is, just constant.
They do. They want to yeah, and they want to sow that
Yeah.
kind of hatred on there to continue. And then let's say someone who does protest or not protest, but someone who does riot looks at that and says, "Oh yeah, here's a reason why I should do this," and it's like, no, that's not the reason why you should do that. I don't know.
Yeah. It's, there's just things I'm realizing I need to kind of just stay away from, because I don't like days like yesterday. They're going to happen. But I don't need to go looking for them. Jeez.
Well, and we had a pretty good discussion. So I guess after your podcast, everything kind of went downhill. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I was in a funk.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I guess I would call it a funk.
Yeah, and I
But
think everybody's in that more and more every day. But I think we can get out of it. I'm starting to feel like we can get out of all of this.
well, and that is why it said earlier that I think I'm starting to realize what it is I'm to be about. When I had Miles was on Sunday morning, and one of the things that he said when I asked him about some political stuff, he said, he's called to preach the gospel. He doesn't get involved in a lot of political stuff, and yet I feel shamed by some people if I'm not involved in political stuff, and I got to stop that, man. If that's not my calling, it's not my calling, right?
Right, your calling is to talk about hope, and I don't think a lot of politicians offer that hope that maybe they think they do. They being the people that support.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's being. I'm afraid I'm too concerned. Although I say don't be that way about what other people think, and then you feel a little pressure, and pressure from who? From another human being? I mean, so
It is no, I do too. I mean, I get message. I got a couple messages in my inbox. Oh, you're not for Black Lives Matter. I am. I when I
uh,
say when I say everybody needs to be human, I include minorities. There's no ifs, ands,
uh,
or buts. But I will no longer see. This is my compromise now. I will no
oh.
longer arrogantly assume that I am for the black community because that's kind of how I get the impression is that they want us to truly be with them and support their movement. I guess is just how I see it.
Well, how about just the movement of humanity and
Hmm.
respecting? Again, see, this is exciting. We're having this conversation because I've said this more than once. The whole respect thing comes down to everybody has, and I'm going to get all Jesus, and I don't give a flying anymore.
Go
We're all
for it.
created in God's image.
Uh huh.
It got messed up a long time ago, but that doesn't change the fact that we're all created in God's image. Now, if I take that incredible image and it got all messed up, and I decide I'm going to be, I don't know, whatever, that's not something that you would probably want to lift up and say, world, this is what we should be like. That's a different story. But what am I, what, it's like, what am I doing with this life that I have? I don't know when it could be over.
Right.
So what am I going to do with it in the meantime?
Well, that's why
Hope,
all these
Michael.
Radio Hope 9 a.m. Eastern, by the way. But that's why these podcasts are so important
I
because
love how you do that.
they can just lay it all on, we lay it all on the line or on the microphone, if you will, for people to hear. So in the event something does happen, they're out there and people can revisit us.
And and I'm all, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a good way to put that. What am I leaving as a legacy? You know,
My legacy.
and
I love that. They were saying, what's more useful than Mayor Bill de Blasio?
oh
And I
no,
said, my right leg.
oh no, oh that's funny, and oh that's funny. That's a sense of humor. I needed that. I talk to my wife about you quite often and how you are somebody who just we shall overcome.
We
You just
shall.
overcome adversity, and I like to think I do, but yesterday not so much. I was like me, want a little cheese with your wine. Knock it off, Myers. You're such a Myers.
I will tell you another
Anyway,
night of not watching anything on TV, and I was pretty relaxed when I woke up this morning. So there's a big part of that I'm feeling good about, just turning away from
oh,
everything again.
now I did watch a Tucker Carlson segment. It was about a half hour long, and it showed a lot of the crap that people are doing. And I get it. It was difficult to watch, and I thought, you know what? I think I'll post that on the uncensored Boone community page. And somebody had already done that. I checked it out this morning. It's a page I need to stay away from. There's a
Oh,
particular person that really likes to make trouble. Go ahead.
there was a huge thing in your state last night. Steve King had lost
Yeah.
the GOP primary, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty happy. I don't know if you know the guy, but I'm kind of happy that he's out.
Steve King pulled some, how do I, crap, pulled some crap at one of our caucuses 4 years ago. And he had said that it was announced officially that Ben Carson was backing out of the race, which was not true. And I was a big Carson. I even have a T-shirt with his name. I got to meet him and his wife. Beautiful people.
Yeah.
All right, enough name dropping. Anyway, yeah. So he's
But so that, and the fact that it's a primary means
Yeah.
the GOP has a shot to win that seat again, just with someone else in it. And at the time, I was so hoping that others would be stripped of their seats if they were going to strip Steve King of what he was saying. Like, the Democrats also should be held accountable for what they say.
Well, and what's interesting is with what you just brought up, and I checked that about 2-3 o'clock this morning, and what was going on. I was like, oh wow, interesting. And there are folks out, of course, attacking Joni Ernst and Kim Reynolds. People are out for this. Just anyway. So what am I saying?
About Joni Ernst? I'm curious now.
Isn't Joni Ernst the one that said something about castrating pigs or something? She
Really, I didn't know.
She
I
ran.
didn't know that.
Was it Joni Ernst that did that? It was a pretty interesting ad campaign that she ran, if I remember right. It was effective. But politics.
She had
Politics.
an incredible. She actually read that rebuke of Obama's State of the Union a couple of years ago, and she was pretty strong in it. That's kind of where I remember her from.
Well, and here's the issue with what I'm doing right now. I am repeating things that I read about what a nasty person she is, rather than what I think about Joni Ernst. I think she's a fantastic lady. I mean, that's where I'm coming from.
And and your governor has sort of kept law and order in that state, and thank God for that.
Yeah, absolutely. She's another one that's done a great job. But it comes down to this. It's like, if they're a Democrat, they suck. If they're Republican, they don't. How about, or vice versa, or
Right.
vice versa, or whatever.
Right.
I am so sick of that mentality. I mean, there was a Republican that ran a number of years ago. I did everything to make sure that he didn't get into office.
Good.
He still ended up on Trump's team in Washington, D.C., somebody who I know quite well, and ended up quitting before he got canned because of some stuff he said about African Americans a number of years. Well, Steve Deace was in on this. You and I know Steve Deace.
Yes.
Yeah. And so this guy ended up stepping down before he got kicked out. And, a crook is a crook. Let's just leave it at that. Okay. Thanks.
And I am getting word that there was some looting last night again in Soho, so it still was out there. A looting street party. I mean, this is how crazy it's getting. But no, for Iowa to do that, I have seen that state because I guess of the Democratic shambles that were happening in January and February. But I've seen that state become a little more bluer or not taking a rogue Republican's shit anymore.
Who's that?
Your state of Iowa seems to be not taking anybody's shit anymore with stuff down there.
Yeah, there are people that are, standing up. There is something, again, for me, it's I shouldn't have done that. That sounds really like I'm making fun of myself. Oh, Lord, help me. Anyway, I gotta share this real quickly. This is what happens. See, we get together. We could do it 15 hours every day. That's another thing I'm starting to get excited about. Focusing more on what I believe my calling is. So let me back up and say this very quickly, if I can. Somebody posted on Facebook, well, yeah, but they're destroying people's personal property and stuff. And somebody said, well, it wasn't their personal property. It was stuff from businesses. And I'm thinking, that's that business owner's personal property until it's sold, for crying out. You dim twit. When I think God made a mistake when he created you in his image. I think that's what I think. I think you're.
There is kind of that.
I'm sorry.
And then so where I think this whole thing really started was, yes, shoot the looters by Trump, that tweet. But you know what they started to publicize more? The Friday morning after the 3rd precinct in Minnesota was destroyed by fire. The mayor comes out and says, well, brick and mortar is less important than life. And I think that was also a signal that they could just do whatever they wanted. I hate to say it, but looking back at that, I feel like that was a driving force to this.
Well, and think of that mentality. And unless it's your brick and mortar, unless it's your house, that's where it gets really interesting. It's okay to steal somebody else's bread unless it's your bread.
Right.
The commandments. I'm not going to go there, but I could. It's the thou shalt not. Never mind. You have given me such inspiration. I woke up this morning. And now I'm ready.
You're fired up. I love it. Hey, I was also thinking of this. I guess now we can see that walls work, right?
That walls work?
Yes, because of all the looting. We protect ourselves from the looting because of walls and windows and all that stuff.
Well, and isn't that just a great way to continue to slam by saying, Trump, walls don't we? It's so, I have to just get away from it because the craziness of the thought process is so illogical that it doesn't help my mental health. I have to get away from it because it's really getting me depressed. It's like, that's really how you think? Are you serious? And who wants to be around people that are just totally irrational in the way that they think about things? It's just, I can't do it. I'm going to Wilson's today because I want to be around normal people.
Yeah, normal people who want to be out and about. I'm thinking about that. With people not social distancing in New York at these bars last week, and then with all this stuff going on with the riots, I feel like there's still no one normal outside yet. Yes, the peaceful protesters are normal, but mostly people are just staying in their house. Those are the people that are just kind of abiding by what we have to do right now against Corona. So I don't know what's actually normal out there.
and actually staying in the house is probably, it has probably protected my mental health far more than my physical health. But I'm at a point now where I got to get out. Hang out with some folks, share some hope. Doesn't have to be all religious. I've got a thing going on right now with Janelle about Christian concerts, kind of, sort of, and how they can sometimes maybe be a little. Yeah. I think we're just supposed to be out amongst people with the good news, not out trying to, push Jesus down their throat. Just sharing hope and love, and if it comes down to God's word, which is Jesus, then that's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to let you go do the producing. I've got a guest in the waiting room, but Michael.
Good.
I love you, brother, and we will.
You too.
We will
Thanks,
no
man.
doubt talk to you soon.
No doubt.
See you, bud.
God bless, man.
God bless.
Have a great one.
All right, coming up in just a minute, we've got Joe Silverstein. He's of the Cornell Review. In the waiting room for me. He'll be right out, and we'll be back on this edition of the Alex Garrett Podcasting Production. Well, welcome back, and thanks for joining us right now. We've got Joe Silverstein, editor-in-chief of the Cornell Review, on the line. But first, thanks again, Mike Myers, for joining us today on Alex Garrett Podcasting. And there he is, needing really no introduction. Joe Silverstein, I brought you on because you're a millennial, and to be very honest with you, I just want to hear you rip it about what's going on in this country, because I know you got a lot of thoughts today, and thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Alex. The first thing I would say is that we need unity as a country. I see a lot of people trying to turn this into white versus black and trying to, initiate class warfare. And what we need is unity. I think that most people in the country are good, and that's what we should work towards. That's the first thing. The second thing I have to say is I've seen over the last 2 days a total failure by the progressive mayors, by the Democratic governors, to bring law and order to the cities. It's been nothing short of disgusting. This all went south when they let the protesters go light a precinct on fire and burn it to the ground. Once that was televised on national TV, it enabled everybody. And don't think this doesn't have to do with the bail reform. Don't think this doesn't have to do with the fact that they just let out all the violent criminals for COVID-19. So this is a total disgrace. What happened in New York City is totally ridiculous with de Blasio. The fact that he didn't back the police, the fact that his genius of a daughter was out there getting arrested during the protests. So the real problem here is you have three elements to this. You have the peaceful protesters during the day. And then when it starts to get towards the evening, you have Antifa coming. And then on top of Antifa, the third group that you have are the violent criminals, the ones that are the real, released from jail, that are really just breaking into these stores and beating the hell out of people, the violent criminals. Because the Antifa people, they're not tough. The Antifa people, their arms are about 2 inches big, and it's not too impressive. But it's really something the NYPD has to be allowed to do their jobs. Last night was much better, I have to say, but the night before.
Let me ask you about that, because finally they realized that deploying almost the entire force, I guess, was going to help the situation. Why wasn't that done earlier?
Well, it should have been done earlier, but we have an incompetent leader, if you could call him a leader at all. Listen, if I were a mayor, the second I saw all these cops getting attacked, that would have been it for me. I saw 2 nights ago in the Bronx, the cop got attacked. A car flew into him. He got hit by a car going at 40 miles an hour. The guy's body, he goes flying through the street. He almost died. Another incident, I believe in the Bronx, they're holding a cop against the wall and punching him and beating him down. Why didn't the cop pull his weapon and shoot at the people who were beating the living hell out of him? They could have killed him. You know why he didn't? Because he didn't think the mayor had his back. He didn't think the police chief had his back. And enough is enough for this already. And the sad thing is, we all agree, totally agree, that what happened to George Floyd is ridiculous, should have never happened, is a tragedy. But what does that have to do with the cop in Brooklyn? What does it have to do with the cop in the Bronx getting shot at?
Joe, I've got to ask you then, because you mentioned George Floyd. Did you take a look at his life story? It's actually one of rebound. So he was in jail from 2009 to 2014, goes to Minneapolis to make a better life for himself. He made his life matter, and I just wish people would see that when he got out of jail, he wasn't out to destroy people. He was out to make his own life better. So I wish there was that kind of push to make everybody, whenever they're incarcerated, I don't care which, skin color you are. I mean, if you're incarcerated, afterwards you should make a better life for yourself after. And I just think that narrative isn't being out there right now.
Well, that is a beautiful part of the story, and I am aware of that. But I guess the media doesn't care about positivity and doesn't care about redemption stories. They only care about, looping videos of the few bad cops doing stupid things. So that's the real unfortunate thing about it. But yeah, no, he had a good story, and he had a good message to the youth too. I don't know if you saw the video that emerged on social media, but he said, the youth is clearly lost. The generation after us has a lot of problems. He made a whole video, an emotional video about it. And, against the backdrop of everything that's been happening, it's really powerful to see.
And
it's
is that
unfortunate.
being shared on social media? I don't really see it being shared out there.
I'll tell you what's being shared on social media. I've seen, particularly among the white liberals, the college students in the suburbs that don't know the damage they're causing, they're posting the links to the bail funds for what's going on. Just don't go donate to the bail, be a part of the cause. Do they understand that the people getting arrested? It's not going around arresting protesters. The people getting arrested are getting arrested for a reason. There's people getting in the face of police, egging them on, egging on the minorities. You know something? It's totally inappropriate what I'm seeing, and a lot of it is the idiot white liberal contributing to it as usual, and no one appreciates them. So you know what? That is what it is.
Well, and I've been getting videos of both sides of this, and it's kind of horrifying either way. But I mean, there is I want a study done, and Joe, maybe you agree with me. I want a study done on what initiated what, like who initiated these clashes first in a lot of these instances. Was it the protesters? Was it the cops? I mean, there's got to be a study of actual numbers that we can really go off of, right?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you this though. I saw bricks being thrown. I saw a video, for example. There's bricks being thrown at the police car. There's cones being thrown at the police car. People are hitting the windows. This is meanwhile when there's all types of cop cars burning and all types of cars burning. I think they said 60 in New York City alone. And the cops, who are surrounded by people that are all mobbing and throwing things at them, the cops don't drive through the crowd and run people over, but they drive forward a little bit. And you know what? There's the barricade there, and they violently push some of the people back that are throwing bricks. And everyone's sharing the video. Oh, look how horrible. Look at this. Excuse me. What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to stand there and get a brick thrown at their head and die? It's ridiculous. If you throw a brick at a police officer, that's attempted murder. So stand there peacefully and hold the sign. Don't throw. This isn't a third world country. You don't get to throw bricks at police officers.
Correct. New York doesn't even loot. New York does not loot. That's not the the city I know. But Joe.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think looting is a strong enough term. People say the term looting. I think we should say robbing. You know, to me, looting, I think of a teenager in a candy store, you know, stealing a pack of bubble gum. This isn't looting. This is destruction of property. And this is the erosion of the social fabric of the country. Because if we can't trust that the government is going to trust property, what good are they if they can't trust? If they can't protect property, if they can't protect human lives? There's business owners getting beaten to death in the streets.
Joe,
what is this?
You are a millennial, so how are you trying to change the narrative for people of our generation to understand it better than what they're saying right now?
Well, I'm actually a Gen Z. I'm a little younger than a millennial. I'm right by that Gen Z, the ones that are, coming up right underneath it. But, listen, I mean, I guess I don't know if it can be changed. I'm not optimistic after what I've seen on social media by my peers. I'm not optimistic of people that are blindly posting bail links, blindly supporting Black Lives Matter movement. They don't even know what they're posting about. First of all, I'm all for the justice system. I'm all for justice system reform when it makes sense. I believe in equality of opportunity for everyone. And it's important to establish that and to make steps towards that if we're not there already. That being said, though, the Black Lives Matter movement from their official pages actually advocates for defunding the police. That's an official policy suggestion of Black Lives Matter, not just the people hashtagging or recommending, but that's on their pages. But no one looks into that. No one questions what the actual political organization is advocating for. They just want to appear woke for their peers, so they hashtag Black Lives Matter. And all these companies that are taking a stand saying hashtag Black Lives Matter, of course Black Lives Matter. But all the companies that are saying hashtag Black Lives Matter, they're standing for defunding the police. Either they don't know, or they know and they don't care and they agree with it because the social justice warriors have, infiltrated the corporations to such a degree that's just total insanity.
Joe, I've got to ask you this then. So you watched yesterday, the Blackout Tuesday, and even, blacks were not that happy that trend was happening because it was taking away from the real situation and the real dialogue. Would you agree?
Well, I don't want to speak for, for all African Americans, but I will tell you from anecdotal experience, I've had a lot of African American friends message me and say that they can't stand to see what's going on. And, I'll also tell you that the reasonable conversations I've had about the subject of police brutality, and this is, two people coming from totally different perspectives and totally different walks of life. But the reasonable conversations I've had have been with African Americans, because the conversations with white progressives on college campuses, my fellow peers, my fellow suburban peers who just want to appear woke to everyone, those conversations are ridiculous, and they break down in being called racial slurs that start with a C and end with an R, and I think you could understand that. Which, it is what it is. I think that maybe that's not the best thing to call someone, but it just crazy. I mean, totally ridiculous. Totally ridiculous.
Joe, on the other hand, though, it's amazing to see the normal peaceful protesters blocking out the white Antifa. I mean, that's happening too. It's kind of crazy to watch.
Yeah, it is. I saw a couple of things. I saw a beautiful video of, there was a group in the city of African American protesters during the day, because the daytime is usually more peaceful. And they saw one of the Antifa members all covered up with the glasses and everything in the kind of outfits that they wear. And they grabbed them and they dragged that person and threw them to the police and did a citizen's arrest. And I was very happy to see that. And then there was in the inner cities, there was going to be people that an officer got, separated from his unit, and a bunch of people in the mob, because that's what it is. It's a mob, surrounded him. This is at night now. And there were peaceful protesters that surrounded him and blocked him off from the rioters to prevent what would have happened. And what would have happened wouldn't have been good.
Joe, yeah, no, it wouldn't have. I just got an email about Steve King, the guy in Iowa who lost his GOP primary. But I'll ask about that in a second. But what is the Cornell Review doing to get you through this? It seems like we're talking after one after the next. We had COVID, now we have this. How is Cornell keeping up with everything, and how is the review handling this situation?
So we're going to be doing a panel with members of the African American community very soon. Some conservatives, some not conservatives, and we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about policing. We're going to be talking about solutions to the problem. And to me, the solutions to the problem are economic opportunity in Black communities and fixing the broken education system. Because if you don't fix the fact that there's not good economies in these areas, then you're never going to fix any of the other problems. You could do police reform all you want, but at the end of the day, if there's no jobs, there's going to be increased crime rates in low income areas, and that's what we see now playing out. And that's what, and same with the education system too, because the education system all over the city is a problem, but particularly in the inner cities. And I know this both from the statistics of it and also from my own experience on the chancellor's committee when I was in student government in high school. The CSAC, they called it, the Chancellor Student Advisory Committee. There was people from all different boroughs and all different high schools, and I was from, obviously, Staten Island, but there were people from poor areas of the Bronx that were saying, you're leaving us here with nothing. The schools are terrible, so you need to fix the education system.
We definitely do need to do that, and I'm glad you're tackling all this and having an actual conversation, which I'm finding this time around a lot of people are willing to have, even those on the Black Lives Matter movement, those not part of it. We're all kind of trying to talk this through together, which is such an important part of our moment in our history right now.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And I just want to say too, I can't hit on this point enough. I think that there's certain things that there was a Professor Fryer, by the way, at Harvard University, the youngest African American to receive tenure at Harvard. And he did a study on police brutality, and he found that there was no racial disparities. There was no evidence of discrimination when it came to police-involved shootings, and that once you controlled for other factors, that played out in the data. So I'll email you the study if you want. But the reason I raised that, though, there's too many people that aren't even questioning the narrative. They're not even questioning the narrative. They're not even questioning the allegations that something like white supremacy is embedded in the legal system. That's a term I've heard thrown around. And that's accepted. People just repost that and accept that without looking into it, without questioning it, without anything. Allegations that there's systemic racism in the system still to this day. There's not one law in the books that's systemically racist.
Joe,
You know, and
no, I agree. No, I agree. And you're hitting on a point because remember what Minneapolis it is, or what reporters it is, they actually investigated the Minneapolis Police Department, did a thorough investigation. They didn't broad brush anything there. And I feel like here we tend to broad brush the NYPD, and that hurts us in the long run.
well, the NYPD get no respect, and that's why people lost a lot of sympathy for a lot of these idiots on Twitter. Because when the guy got hit in the Bronx and his body went flying across the street, the police officer, the response on Twitter by a lot of these schmucks was that, quote, "I never knew I'd see pigs fly," with heart emojis. That's what we're dealing with here. So you know what? You have to know what you're up against. It's disgusting, and it needs to be met with strength. There has to be, at a certain time, understanding and reform. But first, we need to get our city back. There needs to be strength because this can't be allowed to happen. It's ridiculous. And it's been enabled, and it's being egged on, and we can't let it happen. And again, the fact that the violent criminals, I saw on Twitter, there was I don't know what this guy was trained in. There was a guy that squared up with the police officer. And I'm not going to start bragging about this and that, but I had a Taekwondo fight. I pretty much know how to handle myself with those kinds of situations. But this guy, I don't know if he was a judo expert. I don't know what his deal was. He goes to fight a cop. He weaves like Mike Tyson. He grabs the cop and he judo throws him to the floor. This is what you're dealing with. They're some of the toughest, most hardened criminals that were released from the prisons by your idiot mayor. Just like there was the rapist that got released that went out and raped a woman 3 days later. That's what you're dealing with here, an idiot. And his daughter's involved with a crazy mugshot. His daughter's involved in the protests. Yeah. So you know what? That's what you're dealing with. Do you think Giuliani would have let this happen? Do you think Bloomberg even would have let this happen? I don't think so.
My goodness, so many points. Joe, and I'm sure, I don't know, has Giuliani spoken out about this? I haven't heard either mayor speak out about this yet.
Oh, Giuliani's been all over the news speaking out about it.
I mean, he is on radio, so I guess he has been, so.
Yeah, Giuliani's been all over the news speaking out about this, and rightfully so. If I had a successor to a job position that did this poorly of a job, I'd be speaking out too. This guy is a disaster.
Well, and remember, you were talking about the running of the cops over. Cops with the police vehicles running the protesters over, whatever. He bungled that response. I mean, he just cannot even handle one kind of incident and respond properly, it seems like, de Blasio.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. You know, I don't even know what to say to it. You're totally right. He hasn't given us any evidence that he's a competent leader or an otherwise intelligent or literate person prior to this, so nothing's going to change now.
Do you think Cuomo would really displace him if he really had to, or does he not have the guts to do it?
I think Cuomo is a mouthpiece. He likes to play it up on Twitter, but in reality, he turned down the National Guard. Just like with the COVID, everyone got behind him for weeks, and then all of a sudden he got exposed for being an embarrassment with the nursing homes. So I really don't have much of an opinion of Cuomo either, but I will say it's the situation of dumb and dumber. So Cuomo would be the dumb, and then de Blasio is far dumber.
Well, let me ask you about this, because we have now been told to look this way while things are happening that way. I mean, it's like COVID 1 week, then this the next. Why is there so much like smoke and mirrors being thrown at us right now?
I think it's a tough time. I think, first of all, I didn't like the fact I saw nurses outside cheering the protesters on. And if you're cheering on the protesters, why are you standing in the middle of the road blocking people who want to reopen their business? So I love the nurses, but I didn't like that too much. So I think after this, we need to reopen the country and let everyone take their chances and act accordingly. And for the people who want to go back to work, fine. And the people who don't, fine. And everyone's going to have to make their choices. But why is this allowed and opening the businesses aren't? And de Blasio said, oh, well, this has to do with 400 years of oppression. So this is okay, but the opening of the businesses, it's just not as important. He doesn't get to make that decision. What is it? You're saying he gets to dictate our lives based on what he agrees with and doesn't agree with? Now it's totally, totally ridiculous. So you know what? I don't even.
What's lost in the conversation? Sorry. Go
yeah, I'm sorry. To your question about, though, just how do we handle this? Listen, there's no doubt, even still, this is a tough year. this is a tough year for people. But you know what? We're tough people. We're the greatest country in the world. And I think we need to start having more pride in that and remember who the hell we are as a country, because people forget. People forget who we are and the things this city has accomplished, rising from the ashes after 9/11, building back up Staten Island after Hurricane Sandy. That's who we are. So we'll come through this, no doubt.
And I think true New Yorkers, true New York African Americans were the ones standing in front of the target protecting it. We saw that too. We saw protesters protecting the businesses from the rioters, and I love those visuals as well. And so I've got to say, how come the conversation
didn't happen enough, by the way. I'll be honest with you, didn't happen enough. It happened, and when it happened, it was beautiful, and it's been happening more. But in the beginning, it didn't happen enough. And there's been videos that have emerged that are just totally ridiculous. Videos of people who are Caucasian on their knees praying for forgiveness to a group of African Americans for slavery. I'll send you the link on Twitter. Dave Rubin, who is no right winger, Dave Rubin is a liberal, if anything. He happens to be somebody who is also in the LGBT community, so he's not this crazy right winger. But Dave Rubin tweeted out a video. There's idiot white people on their knees praying for forgiveness to slavery. And they repeat after me like it's a church ceremony.
Oh
I ask for forgiveness, and then the crowd goes, I ask for forgiveness. So you know what? I thought I was living in an alternate universe when I saw that. Most black people don't want that. Most black people would look at them and say, "What is this lunatic doing on the floor?" And they call the police on them. That's what most black people would do. They're normal people.
That's right.
But you know, unfortunately, that's not the world we're living in anymore. Apparently, this is it. We're in a dystopia. This is your country now, burning.
Joe, I'm so glad I had you because I figured you'd have this kind of thought process today, and I'm glad you were waking up early to do this with me. The other thing that's been lost is that there are a lot of minority business owners, and their businesses are being destroyed too. And it's just like, is that the point, to avenge someone's horrible death, to then, pretty much put a life out of one of the minorities? Is that what the real goal is here? That's horrible.
Well, I have to tell you, I saw some of the videos that really, really pulled at my heart. I saw some of the videos of the black business owners that had their stores destroyed in tears, crying because of what had happened in Minneapolis and other places. And you know what? It's really just something when you see it, when you see someone who spent, 30 years building a business. People say, oh, well, it's just property. Property is important in this country. Property is important in this country. And if you care about black lives, then you wouldn't be destroying black lives. But there's a lot of anarchists that are taking advantage of this. And there's a lot of just rage and people who just want to, and the problem too is the African-American community has been lied to. The African-American community has been lied to by the liberal media. I hate to put it in those terms, so I'm just going to say the media has been lied to by the media, has been lied to by the politicians, and has been oppressed by the politicians in their own inner cities. And I'll let you look into what party those politicians belong to. But the fact of the matter is that there is oppression, but it's not from the police and it's not from anything in the books, but it's a societal oppression. It's an expectation that's pushed on them, and it's this victimhood narrative that's pushed on them. So my belief, and I think Republicans, the problem is the Republican elites don't follow through. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. But you need an entrepreneur to go into those communities in the inner cities and to open businesses and to invest in improving the education system and invest in after school programs and financial programs to teach about finances and things like that. You need to get down the birth rate out of wedlock. Why are these things uncomfortable to talk about? Why are these things you can't bring up? And again, it's so ridiculous because it's so divisive. And it's like, even if you cite one statistic, it's like automatically people shout racist. But the fact of the matter is, statistically, it's not white people killing black people. Okay. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that it's double in the other direction. Black people kill a lot more white people than the other way around. And I wouldn't use that to judge all black people because that would be ridiculous. That would be totally ridiculous. But when you see these blanket statements being made on the news, that it's like there's this targeting of black people in society. It's not true, and thank God it's not true, because if it were true, that'd be terrible. But something like, there's a lot of false narratives being pushed here.
No, there are, and just 3 days before this murder happened, Biden went on Charlemagne and said, "You're not that black if you don't vote for Trump." So it's just crazy how.
Well, he didn't even say you're not that black. He said you ain't black.
Sorry, yeah.
So you have this 80-year-old, person that was friends with a segregationist, okay, that's saying they're going to put y'all back in chains. I mean, Biden has a history of this. Biden's no angel. Another one, the guy gets on his knees. He's sitting in a church with the mask on. He looks like a fool. Another person, he's going to run the country.
Hey, Joe, really quickly, the last thought. This whole thing feels like we were just put inside to let the anarchists rule the world. Is that about right? Is that why this happened in March?
Well, I think the epidemiologist got it wrong. There were a lot of people, specifically in talk radio, and I will shout out Dr. Michael Savage, who had pointed out that Fauci may not be the best person to be making these decisions. I will say that when you force the entire country to stay home from work, this is what happens. People have nothing better to do but to just start rioting and tearing down the system. This is exactly what happens in societies, the breakdown of the social fabric. And to that point, the last thing I want to say, the most beautiful moment, one of the most beautiful moments in this country's history during my lifetime has been seeing President Trump walk to the church after that historic St. John's Church after it was burning the night before. He went out, the Secret Service cleared it, and that's it. And it was almost like the symbolic reclaiming of the country, because these anarchists, these Antifa, they believe this country is fundamentally racist and flawed, and they want to destroy this country and destroy the institutions. They want to burn down America and recreate it in their own image. This is a manifestation of the Marxists on campuses. Make no mistake about it. That's what this is. This is class warfare divided, disguised in racial warfare. That's what this really is. Beverly Hills, they were chanting "Eat the rich," among other things. But the fact that CNN and other media organizations couldn't even celebrate that moment, and the fact that the New York Times has a headline out yesterday saying that Trump clears it for photo op is disgusting.
But to be clear, I do not condone the way the military was put in there to get rid of the protesters. I don't think they were being violent. It just looked bad. It looked bad. And I will.
Well, you know what? I'll disagree with you. I'll say that I condone it, because when the president has to go somewhere, the Secret Service has to clear it. And that's what happened. And you know what? You have to push back the people, too, because A, it was at the curfew at 7 p.m. But B, when the curfew comes, you have to start dispersing. There's a curfew for a reason, because of everything that's been happening. But once nightfall happens, the crazy ones embed themselves in there, and then you don't know who's who. And the later it gets, the more violent it gets. So I have nothing against it whatsoever. Look at in the 1990s, the way they had to stop the riots. It's not a fun job being in that position of law enforcement. It's not a pretty job. And yeah, you'll find videos of protesters getting roughed up a little bit. But you know what? If it's a protester getting roughed up, or if it's a building burning, I think I'd rather have the protester getting roughed up.
Well, I would rather just peaceful protesting in general instead of the rioting that we saw. So that's that. But I will tell you one thing. It seems like the day after Trump makes this speech, and I was a little, he was going to deploy the military, but I think it seems that governors were listening to him, because look at how peaceful it was last night for the most part. I mean, for the most part, it looked kind of better than other nights.
Yeah, well, I don't know why Trump waited until Monday, to be honest with you.
Me neither. I don't.
I think it should have been done earlier, but at the same time, I can't complain, because he's the best we have. I mean, there's videos emerging of mayors, the leaked audio to CNN of the mayor in Indianapolis somewhere, and he's saying or Illinois rather, and he's saying all types of ridiculous things about, I don't appreciate your rhetoric and blah, blah, blah. And here they are having a back and forth on the phone. But it's totally ridiculous. Listen, I like Trump. I didn't love how he handled it in the beginning, but unfortunately, even still, it's the best we have, so it is what it is.
Well, Joe, we can only pray for peace and pray for all of us to just be unified and do what we're doing, which is having a dialogue about this. Don't shut anybody out, really, during this time, unless you really feel the need to, I guess is my point.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, less and less people are capable of having a conversation nowadays. But the good news is there's still patriots like you, and there's a lot of others out there. So we'll keep it fighting. And on the issue of Steve King, you want to get to Steve King quick?
Yeah,
I know you
quickly.
mentioned
Yeah,
him
why
before.
not? I'm curious to hear your thought.
You know something? I don't know much about Steve King. I've seen that he has made some controversial remarks in the past, but I haven't seen the specific remarks. I'm happy to see him get defeated in the primary. I think it's a good look for the party, especially in a time like this.
No, it's good, and it was the party, which is a big moment there. Like the GOP itself worked it out. We didn't have to have anybody tell the party, "Hey, you need to do this." They just did it naturally, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Joe, Cornell Review, where can we find you on Twitter or Facebook? Where are you guys?
At Silverstein USA for me, and then the Cornell Review for Twitter, Joe Silverstein for Instagram, and the Cornell Review for Instagram, and the same for Facebook.
And Joe, this has been really helpful, and I'm sure my listeners will revisit this too. So thanks so much, Joe.
Alex, God bless. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
God bless you. I'm Alex Garrett. We will talk to you again tomorrow. Radio Hope, 9 a.m. Eastern. Check them out now.